As a learner, you were probably taught that telling the truth is just, well, about being a good person. Like it's that golden rule you learn in kindergarten so you don't end up on the naughty list.
Right, it's framed as being polite or being ethical, maybe just being a reliable friend.
Exactly. But what if that entire framework is looking at the concept of truth completely upside down? Like, what if honesty actually has very little to do with being, good and absolutely everything to do with the literal physics of reality?
It's a massive paradigm shift, honestly, because
Yeah.
we're so conditioned to think of truth as a behavioral choice, right? Like something extra we layer on top of our lives to just be
That
civilized.
a nice bonus feature.
Right. But the research we're exploring today argues that treating truth as mere ethics is it's arriving way too late to the party. If you're only looking at truth as a moral guideline, you're entirely missing the structural function it plays in keeping you alive.
Which is wild to think about.
Ugh.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today we are basically taking a sledgehammer to the idea that honesty is just a polite social convention.
100%.
We're unpacking this really dense, fascinating body of research that argues, saying what is true isn't just a nice thing to do. It is the ultimate structural foundation for your mind, your physical body, and like the entire civilization you live in.
It's the groundwork for everything.
Exactly. Our mission today is to figure out why truth is an ontology. And for anyone who didn't major in philosophy, ontology is just a $10 word for the study of what actually exists, the study of being.
And establishing that baseline is so crucial because the core claim of this source material is that every other virtue you can possibly think of, kindness, strategic planning, diplomacy, justice, they're all just secondary structures built on top of truth.
Like architecture.
Exactly like architecture. If the foundation of truth is missing, every single thing built on top of it is structurally compromised. It genuinely doesn't matter how elaborate or well-intentioned your kindness is, If it isn't based on reality, it's going to collapse.
It's kind of like trying to drive a car where the steering wheel is entirely disconnected from the tires.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like you could be the most ethical, well-intentioned driver in the world, carefully turning the wheel 10 degrees to the left to avoid a cliff. But if your steering column isn't physically connected to the reality of the axle, your good intentions do absolutely nothing. You're going over the edge.
You're going right off the cliff. And to understand how truth functions as this, mechanical linkage to reality, we actually have to look backward. Ancient cultures literally hardwired this concept into their languages.
They did. And it's such a stark contrast to how abstract our modern concept of truth has become.
Take Sanskrit, for example. The Sanskrit word for truth is satya, and that word derives from the root word sat.
Okay.
But sat doesn't just mean truth, it simultaneously means being or existence.
Yeah.
There is no linguistic mechanism in ancient Sanskrit to split those two concepts apart.
Wait, really? So they are literally the same word?
Exactly. That which actually has being is precisely what is meant by truth.
So if I lie in that cultural framework, I'm not just, being a bad person or breaking a rule. Am I literally pretending something exists when it doesn't?
You're asserting non-being. You're trying to inject a phantom into reality,
Yeah.
which fundamentally changes how you view morality.
I mean, that changes everything.
It does. You see this in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which outlines the foundational practices for yogic philosophy. In that text, Satya truth actually precedes and structurally supports ahimsa, which is the principle of non-harm.
Oh, wow. Because modern wellness culture usually puts non-harm at the very top of the pedestal, right? We think protecting people from pain is the highest good.
Because nobody wants to hurt someone's feelings.
Exactly. But this ancient framework points out a brutal mechanical reality.
Yeah.
You cannot practice genuine non-harm if you aren't willing to say what actually is.
Right. You can't protect someone from a cliff if you're actively feeding them an illusion that the cliff is a meadow.
Which is terrifying when you realize this wasn't just isolated to ancient India. The Greeks had a remarkably similar structural understanding of this.
They did, yeah. The ancient Greek word for truth was aletheia. It's a compound word. The prefix a means not, and lethe refers to the river Lethe from their mythology.
River of forgetting in the underworld, right?
Exactly. The river of forgetting or concealment. So, when a Greek philosopher spoke of truth, the literal translation of the word coming out of their mouth was unforgetting or unconcealing,
Just bringing it out of the shadow.
which was heavily explored by the 20th century philosopher Martin Heidegger. For him, truth was never about just, matching facts on a piece of paper, like checking off a multiple choice test.
Right, like a simple true or false.
He viewed truth as the event of unconcealment. It's an active, ongoing process of dragging reality out of the darkness and into the light. When you lie, or even when you simply withhold a vital truth out of fear, you're actively participating in returning the world to darkness.
You're forcing reality back into concealment.
Exactly.
And if we travel over to ancient Egypt, you see this embodied in the concept of Ma'at. Ma'at was the goddess, but also the unified principle of cosmic order and truth.
The weighing of the heart.
Yes. In their mythology, when you died, your heart was weighed on a scale against the feather of Ma'at. If your heart was heavy with concealment, deception, and like the exhaustion of maintaining a false reality, you couldn't pass the ultimate judgment.
Your heart was literally too dense with unreality to proceed into the afterlife.
Right. So across all these disparate cultures, you have this shared observation that reality has an underlying ordering principle. And speaking the truth is how you participate in that order.
So, if truth is the underlying structure of reality, the obvious next question is, what happens when we try to navigate our lives using a structurally flawed map?
Right. Because we all use maps.
We do. We're moving from ancient cosmology to the everyday mental cost of navigating life, what philosophers might call the epistemological cost. How do we know what we know? And what is the penalty when we get it wrong?
Which brings us to that famous insight from Alfred Korzybski. The map is not the territory.
It's such a brilliant concept. We all navigate reality using representations, the words we use, the concepts we hold about ourselves, the assumptions we make about our partners. Those are our maps.
And no map is perfect.
Right. A map is always a simplification of the actual territory. If a map were perfectly detailed, it would be the size of the territory itself and, well, completely useless.
Well, you'd just be walking on the territory.
Exactly. But there is a massive categorical difference between a map that is naturally imperfect and a map that is deliberately false.
Because when the map is fundamentally false, navigation fails completely. Like, think about a child who grows up in a highly dysfunctional home. Let's say this kid is repeatedly told by their parents that their needs are unreasonable or that they're too sensitive whenever they get upset.
That is a classic example.
That child is being handed a structurally false map of their own internal territory.
And the profound tragedy of that scenario is that the child has to navigate the rest of their developing life using that exact false map. The errors don't just happen once, they compound.
Because every new decision is based on the bad map.
Exactly. If your map tells you that your natural intuition is broken, you make decisions that align with that distortion. You might choose romantic partners who also dismiss your feelings because your map says that's normal.
You suppress your own bodily signals.
Yes. The cost of that original foundational untruth doesn't just add up linearly like 1 + 1. It accumulates exponentially.
But hold on, let me push back on this a little. Because we all know people who seem to get by just fine living in a bit of denial. Isn't ignorance bliss sometimes?
It's tempting to think so.
Like, wouldn't a white lie map occasionally be a safer, less painful route through life? If telling the absolute truth is going to cause a massive disruption in my family, isn't it better to just smooth things over?
That is the eternal temptation, and it's addressed beautifully through the lens of Charles Sanders Peirce, one of the founders of American pragmatism.
Okay, what did he say?
Peirce noted a very stubborn fact about the universe. Reality always provides feedback. It might take a day or it might take 20 years, but reality will eventually assert itself.
Because you can't outrun it.
Right. A false map cannot hold up forever because it constantly bumps into the immovable furniture of the actual territory.
So the real danger isn't just the lie itself, it's the time you waste operating under it.
That is the crucial variable. The source material calls it the primacy of timing. One true thing spoken early on in a relationship can prevent incalculable damage. It course corrects the ship before it leaves the harbor.
But one withheld truth early on.
It produces structural consequences that might take decades to untangle. Imagine spending 20 years building a marriage, a family, and a career on a fundamental misunderstanding of who your partner actually is.
Oh, man.
When reality finally forces a correction, and it always does, the collapse is devastating precisely because of all the time, energy, and life you invested in the illusion.
So if navigating by a false map drains our time and compounding choices, where does that cognitive friction actually go? Like,
Really?
it doesn't just vanish into the ether.
No, it definitely doesn't.
It gets dumped directly into our physical nervous system. Your conscious mind might be totally fooled by a polite white lie, but your body cannot be bypassed. The somatic register knows.
We are getting into the biology of truth here, and it is fascinating. This isn't just some airy mental exercise. Your physical biology processes truth sublinguistically.
Through the nervous system.
Right, we have the vagus nerve, which wanders from the brainstem down through the chest and into the abdomen. And we have the enteric nervous system, literally the brain in our gut, which holds more neurons than your spinal cord.
That is still so crazy to me.
It is, and this system is constantly processing enormous amounts of environmental and social data long before your conscious brain forms a single thought.
I think everyone has experienced this, right? Through what psychologist Eugene Gendlin called the felt sense.
Yes, the felt sense.
It's that physical sensation, maybe a settling in your shoulders, or a deep release of breath when something undeniably true is spoken in a room. Or, on the flip side, it's that tight contraction in your throat, that dissonance in your stomach, when someone is feeding you a line of garbage.
Your body registers the mismatch way before your brain finds the vocabulary to call them out on it.
Exactly.
The biological distinction the text makes here is between what we can call organic truth and a non-organic overlay.
Okay, unpack that.
Organic truth is what emerges naturally from within a living system. It's what your nervous system inherently perceives. A non-organic overlay is the script. It's the PR presentation, the managed persona, the polite lie you build over that organic reality to keep everyone comfortable.
It is exactly like running high-end, demanding software on a computer that is simultaneously infected with a massive background virus.
Oh, that's perfect.
Right. The sheer maintenance cost of that hidden virus drains your battery constantly. It diverts processing power away from the actual programs you're trying to run. You're just exhausted all the time.
That analogy perfectly captures the physiological reality. Suppressed truth does not disappear. It requires continuous, literal, physical energy to maintain the overlay.
So you're just burning fuel.
Constantly. You're spending muscular and neurological resources to hold down an organic truth that is desperately trying to surface.
Which explains the epidemic of exhaustion we see everywhere.
Utterly. This is why chronic inauthenticity creates severe cortisol dysregulation. And for those unfamiliar, cortisol is our primary stress hormone.
The fight or flight juice.
Exactly. When it's chronically elevated, you experience brain fog, persistent fatigue, and your immune system just tanks. The body physically treats the sustained effort of maintaining an untruth as a stressor comparable to a literal predator in the room.
So you're engaging a survival response just to maintain a polite conversation at brunch.
Basically, yes.
Your immune system is literally paying the physical invoice for your polite lies. That is staggering. But of course, this damage doesn't stop at the edge of your skin. What happens when two dysregulated, exhausted nervous systems interact?
It bleeds outward.
Exactly. How does this biological toll bleed outward into our relationships and our society?
We can look at this through the work of sociologist Robert Putnam, particularly his concept of social trust in the book Bowling Alone. He frames trust as a collective resource.
Like a public park or something.
Yeah, it's a commons, much like clean air or a shared reservoir.
Yeah.
We cooperate, we build businesses, we form communities based on a background presumption that the people around us are generally telling the truth.
Right.
But when that presumption erodes through constant deception or manipulation, cooperative life becomes exhaustingly costly. You have to verify every single interaction.
And we've all felt this on a micro level. Like, you walk into a room, maybe a Thanksgiving dinner or a corporate meeting, and you can instantly sense the unsaid truth hanging in the air between two people.
You can cut the tension with a knife.
Exactly. You immediately become hypervigilant. It's not psychic magic. Both nervous systems in that conflict are paying the physical cost of the gap between what is being said verbally and what is actually happening organically, and your nervous system is picking up on their exhaust fumes.
And when that gap turns into an actual violation of trust, we enter the realm of betrayal trauma. The neuroscience there reveals that when someone we depend on lies to us, our body preconsciously encodes our environment as fundamentally unsafe.
We're just stuck in that chronic threat response.
Yes, but the reverse is also profoundly true. Environments of radical, consistent honesty produce measurable decreases in ambient stress.
Really, like it actually lowers the room's stress levels.
Measurably. When you're with someone and you know you don't have to constantly scan for the gap between their words and their reality, your nervous system can finally put down its armor and relax.
But the unsaid truth is sneaky, right? Because when a truth is deeply felt in a relationship but remains entirely unspoken, it creates a bizarre relational distortion.
It's maddening for the people involved.
People start responding to a signal they can't quite locate. They feel confused, estranged, maybe even a little crazy. And this brings up one of the most toxic mechanisms we use to avoid reality, which is dismissiveness.
Dismissiveness is incredibly insidious because it delegates the truth to the realm of the unspeakable.
Give me an example of how that looks in practice.
Let's say you point out a very real, very uncomfortable dynamic in your workplace or your marriage. Instead of engaging with your claim, instead of looking at the territory you're pointing to, the dismissive person attacks you, the map maker.
Oh, right, like you're overreacting.
Exactly. They call you crazy or say you're just trying to start drama.
They delegitimize the speaker, so they never have to face the truth being spoken. I mean, that's the core mechanic of gaslighting, isn't it?
It is. And the truly dark part is how self-reinforcing it becomes over time. The person who is silenced starts to doubt their own map.
They start thinking, maybe I am crazy.
Right. They start doing the suppressor's job for them, they self-police, they swallow their own reality, and they join in the maintenance of the false overlay.
Okay, so we have mapped out this massive cascading disaster. We've seen how false maps ruin our choices, how holding down the truth destroys our immune system, and how unsaid truths poison the relational space between us.
It's a heavy toll.
It really is.
Yeah.
So how on earth do we fix this? How do we cultivate this ruthless alignment with reality without, burning our entire lives to the ground?
The research takes a really fascinating turn here. It moves away from neuroscience and back into deep mythology, specifically looking at goddess traditions.
Goddess tradition.
Yeah, and it frames these myths not just as old stories, but as psychological and cosmological requirements for a functioning human being. Take Kali, for example.
The Hindu goddess.
Yes. The Hindu goddess, often depicted looking terrifying, wearing a necklace of severed heads. Her psychological function is the violent stripping away of false constructs. She represents the force that removes all managed overlays and PR presentations, forcing you to look at organic reality.
So you literally cannot take a PR-managed, perfectly curated version of yourself into an encounter with Kali. It won't survive.
Not at all. It gets stripped away. Then there's Ereshkigal, the Sumerian queen of the underworld. In her myth, the goddess Inanna wants to enter the underworld, but at each of the 7 gates, Ereshkigal demands that Inanna remove a piece of her royal clothing and jewelry.
So she's losing her armor.
Gate by gate. By the time she enters the deepest part of the underworld, she's entirely naked.
Wow.
Think about how that feels in a real human relationship, like a late-night, desperately honest conversation where a failing marriage is finally addressed.
Oh, I see it. You can't enter those deepest, most transformative spaces of human connection wearing your royal garments, your ego, and your rehearsed talking points.
Yeah.
You have to be stripped down to what actually is.
Because virtues without truth are utterly hollow.
This was the biggest aha moment for me in the reading. Compassion without truth just becomes enabling. Like if your friend is destroying their life and you smile and validate their terrible choices because you don't want to cause conflict, you aren't being compassionate.
You're just maintaining a false picture because the truth is uncomfortable for you.
Exactly. And love without truth becomes fusion with a performance. You cannot actually love a fake persona. This is exactly why people who are universally loved for their managed presentations often feel incredibly lonely, because they know nobody actually loves them. They love the mask.
And justice without truth simply becomes ideology. It becomes about enforcing a predetermined narrative rather than responding to the complex reality of human beings. Without truth as the absolute foundational commitment, every other virtue becomes a costume.
But practically speaking, does this mean I have to adopt this policy of brutal honesty and just wreck people's feelings 24/7? Like, do I walk into the office and tell my coworker their presentation was garbage in the name of ontological reality?
Well, no. That is the trap of the self-righteous truth teller, and it's its own kind of distortion. We can look to the Buddhist concept of right speech, or samyagvak, for the necessary nuance here.
Yeah. What are the rules for right speech?
The criteria are incredibly specific. Speech must absolutely be true, but it should also be beneficial, it should be timely, and it should be gentle whenever possible.
So there's a massive difference between helpful, strategic silence and toxic suppression.
Exactly the distinction. Strategic silence is holding a truth in temporary suspension because the conditions for it to be received properly don't exist yet.
Like if someone's in the middle of a panic attack.
Right, or you're in a public setting where it would just humiliate them. But, and this is the key, you are actively working to create the conditions where that truth can eventually be spoken.
Okay, and what about toxic suppression?
Pathological suppression is holding truth down indefinitely just to maintain your own comfort or to artificially prop up a status quo. One is an act of stewardship, the other is an act of betrayal.
And figuring out which one you're doing requires intense practice. The yogic tradition calls this svadhyaya, or self-study. You have to start by looking inward, because shame is the ultimate suppressor of self-truth.
It absolutely is.
If you believe a core part of yourself is shameful, you will force it underground. And you cannot offer other people a transparent map if your own map is heavily redacted.
Which is why truth-telling has to be viewed as a somatic, bodily practice, not just an intellectual decision. You have to build the capacity for it slowly.
What?
Start small.
Like telling the waiter you actually wanted fries instead of a salad.
Exactly. Say what you actually want for dinner instead of saying, I don't care. Express how you really feel in a low-stakes conversation instead of defaulting to, I'm fine.
Because those small micro-truths literally build the neural infrastructure and the physical tolerance you'll need to say the massive life-altering truths when the stakes are incredibly high.
You're training your nervous system.
Yeah. Well, let's pull all of this together because this has been a wild journey. We started with ancient Sanskrit, realizing that a civilization once recognized truth and existence as the exact same phenomenon.
We looked at the compounding disaster of navigating your life with a false mental map.
We felt the physical toll, the cortisol, the exhaustion that holding on to a lie takes on your literal nervous system. We explored how unsaid truth creates a toxic fog of hypervigilance in our relationships.
And we ended with the realization that stripping away our performances is the only way to experience genuine compassion or love.
The ultimate takeaway here is that truth isn't just a moral suggestion. It is the concrete foundation of existence.
And it leaves us with the profound realization that human speech is generative. Speech doesn't just passively describe the world, it actively builds it.
It's world building.
Yes. When you consistently speak the truth, you are contributing to the commons of reality alignment. You are constructing a world that you and everyone who depends on you can navigate safely without falling off a cliff.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to carry with you. It's about decision architecture.
The structure of what choices are even available to you.
Exactly. The research makes it clear that the words you use shape the territory of what becomes possible in your life. If speech is generative, then your unsaid truths are not just hiding your past mistakes. They are actively restricting your future.
You're walling off potential realities.
By withholding the truth, you are walling off entire paths of development, connection, and growth. So ask yourself, what timeline are you locking yourself out of today by continuing to pay the physical and mental maintenance cost of a comfortable, familiar illusion? We started by talking about how we think of truth as a polite rule we follow to be good.
But once you realize it's the concrete pouring into the foundation of your actual existence.
Right. Pouring it into empty air suddenly seems a lot more dangerous than just ending up on the naughty list.